Welcome to episode 213 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. We are back and ready to go. We are kicking off our division previews to start the 24-25 NHL season, and we are going to start with the Pacific Division, as we always do, out of the Western Conference. Casey, let's go to you first, my friend, with the team who you think will finish first in the Pacific.
Hey, I'm happy to talk about the Pacific for once. I actually think this is going to be a fun division to watch and lots of good teams here. And glad you gave me the layup of going first because I think it's an absolute slam dunk that the Edmonton Oilers will win this division. This team is going to continue to prove that they can outscore their problems. Maybe the D-core doesn't look like a top team in this league, and we don't know what to expect out of Skinner still, but this forward group is elite. And they are, more than likely won't have to deal with a slow start from Connor McDavid 2 years in a row. Like, that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the guy still got, 130 something points last year after a slow start. So, Case, I'm in full agreement with you here with the Oilers being number one in this division. And by the way, boys, great to be back. It was a great break, for us, and it's great to be back. So, but yeah, Case, full agreement. I think the Oilers are, it's their division to lose here. Their forward group got even better, adding guys like Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner up front. No Evander Kane for the first part of the season. I think he's out until January, February, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem for them as they got deeper at that position. So, they had 104 points last year, and I think as long as things don't go as bad as they did at the start of last season for the Oilers, they're going to be just okay with winning this division.
Yeah, slam dunk pick, absolutely. Stanley Cup contender. They are the only team in my eyes who should finish first in this division. And looking at the back end, I do get some of the concerns, although I really feel like there's a good opportunity there for a guy like Ty Emberson, who played really well on a really bad San Jose Sharks team last season. Chris Knobloch knows him really well. He's still a young player, and there's a great opportunity for him to, fill a big void and help Darnell Nurse get his game back. And so if Emberson can slot in and do that, that's going to help the Oilers even more. But no question that they are such a strong team, a contender, and should be number one in this division.
A couple things too, like this is a team who's going to have a full season of their head coach. Like, remember last year when Jay Woodcroft got fired, we all kind of said it might have been too early, and that was definitely how I felt about the firing. But Chris Knobloch, to his credit, he's been a really great coach for this team, and they're going to have a full season with this guy, a training camp and all. So it'll be interesting to see how they look under him. And, Case, you mentioned Skinner. He was at points last season just not very good. Their goaltending as a whole was not very good. So you've got to think that, it's going to be better this season, because really, how could it get worse? So that's something I'm going to be keeping my eye on as well.
Something I'm going to keep my eye on is the other Skinner and kind of see if he keeps on with the trend of, Harp's going to hate it, but players flourishing when they leave Buffalo. There's two players in this division that I'm going to have my eye on for that exact reason. But I'm interested to see what Jeff Skinner can do playing with a McDavid or a Draisaitl or an RNH. Like, I feel like he's going to be, close to dynamic again.
Yeah, totally. And I think I know the other guy that you're going to mention, talking about players leaving Buffalo in this division who are poised to have a great season. So if we're good on the Oilers finishing number one, I'll go ahead and select the team I think is going to finish number two in the division. And that's how we're going to do this episode and the next three episodes as well, as we do our season previews for every team in the league as we go division by division. So the team I think is going to finish second in this division, and I don't think this is a hot take. I think they deserve to be the number two team in this division. It's the Vancouver Canucks. The only reason I didn't see them competing or challenging for that number one spot this year in my prediction is because I don't know how long they're going to be without Thatcher Demko, who is obviously their world beater goalie, who has had some health issues, and it's uncertain what his future looks like. But he seemed optimistic at his press conference earlier this week, or that might have been last week at this point. The days are kind of just blending together here, but it sounds like it's an issue that he's just going to have to learn to play through. And we know how good he is when he's healthy, but that's the thing. That's the only reason holding me back on the Vancouver Canucks winning the division. That's why I picked them at 2. The rest of their team is pretty much the same squad. There aren't any major subtractions. They did add Jake DeBrusk, which I think is huge, and that's really going to help them and change their identity up front as well. And if you just look at this team, I think it was a couple off seasons ago where they rebuilt their back end, and it just looks like a playoff team now. I think they have some adds to make at the deadline, possibly maybe in the depth of the bottom 6 group or something. But when you look at this team, especially compared to the team a few years ago, they look like a legit contender, and that's why I'm picking them to finish number 2.
Yeah, I was very high on this team last year, and I think this year, more so than ever, is less uncertainty. Going into the season every single year, there's question marks around some of the top 6 guys. Some guys need to sign big contracts. Who is Brock Besser? How many goals does he score? There's always questions with this team, and we're always trying to figure that out right up until the season. I think all of these questions are kind of generally answered. You have a very solid top 4, as you mentioned, that are all locked up now for multiple years. So no questions there. We know what to expect out of their kind of core 4 forwards, if we want to put it in the Leafs perspective. JT Miller, Pettersson, and Besser. And I'm kind of counting Hoglander in there. I don't know if that's the core 4, the 4th one, but we know what to expect out of these guys. And then Besser and Hoglander are playing for their contract this year. I think Besser needs to prove that was not just a one-off last year. So he's going to be coming out just absolutely filling the net. And then, like you said, we know that Demko is that guy when he's healthy. And really, this team effectively patched that hole with a dirt cheap Lankinen recently. And the emergence of Shilov last year was phenomenal. So we'll see if he can continue there. So I didn't have them in 2. I have them actually at 3. But the only reason I put them at 3 is exactly as you mentioned, because of the early lost games without Demko.
Yeah, and we have no idea how long Demko is going to be out. You hope for Vancouver's sake he's going to be back and playing to the level that they know he can when he does come back, because that's something too, like as a goaltender, when you come back from an injury, we saw it with Vasilevsky last season, I believe was the season he missed the start of, and then he came back and he was meh. So that's something you have to consider when he comes back. You hope he's as good as he can play if you're a fan of the Canucks, but you just really don't know. So yeah, I couldn't put them at 1 for that reason, but I just look at this team and I think they're good enough to finish second in the division. And there's just a lot to like. But Harp, what are your thoughts here on the Canucks?
No, I think you guys pretty much covered it all. They did lose guys like Lindholm and Zadorov and Ian Cole in the offseason, but I think they did a really good job of kind of filling those voids. They add Jake DeBrusk, who I think is going to be really motivated now with a fresh start in a Western Canadian market. They've committed to him long term, and I feel like that's what a young player like that really needed coming out of Boston, which was a tough situation at times for Jake DeBrusk. And then you lose Zadorov and Cole on the back end, but you replace them with Vinny Desharnais, who obviously kind of got phased out of that top 6 D-core in Edmonton in the playoffs, but had a very good regular season and is a big, mean defender. And then you add Derek Forbort as well for some depth to replace a guy like Ian Cole. So I think the Canucks are fine. We mentioned all the big boys. Quinn Hughes could certainly win the Norris Trophy this year. JT Miller had a 100-point season last year, and he is really the heartbeat of this team, it feels like, up front, and is such a critical leader for them. And look, this is a team that pushed Edmonton to Game 7 of the second round with Arturs Shilovs between the pipes. So that was very impressive. He definitely proved something. You add Lenkin in as an insurance policy until Demko is back and ready to go. And the thing with Demko is, what we've been kind of hearing is it's one of those kind of situations where he's got an injury, he's got something, but he's going to have to learn how to manage that and how to play through it. So curious to see how the Canucks deal with all of that, but I'm confident that they'll be able to figure it out, and this team will take yet another step this season, and I've got them in number 2 in this division as well. All right.
Two things about the Canucks just before we move on. Harp, sorry. Just number 1, did you guys see like the news about Lankinen? Like, I know he signed for, I think it was like 875 or something, but it took so long because he was telling teams that he wasn't going to take less than $1 million. And I just thought that was like the most odd situation. I just,
he had a $2 million price tag at one point. And then it kind of trickled down, and Vancouver outweighed him, and then got him for 875. So I think that Vancouver played that very well.
Yeah. So anyway, I was wondering what exactly went on there, but I guess they just played the waiting game. So that's, good for them to get him at that price, because he did not want to sign for that. And the second thing I wanted to mention is, Harp, you brought him up, but JT Miller, he better have another great year, because as you guys know, he is my favorite player in fantasy hockey, and I picked him 6th overall in one of my leagues this weekend. So he better have another good season for this team.
Oh, I'm sure he will. He's a big part of that team for sure. All right, fellas, number 3 in this division, I have the Vegas Golden Knights, and not sure if this is a bit of a hot take or not, kind of like, with Vancouver in the number 2 spot, the uncertainty around Demko. But with Vegas, there's no question that this team got weaker in the offseason. They lost Marchessault, they lost Martinez, they lost Thompson. I think those are pretty much the big main pieces that they lost. And so, again, it's the line that, Chris McFarland, the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche, has used. When you win the Stanley Cup, you kind of have to pay the cup tax, right? It's hard to keep everybody together. Chandler Stevenson, another player that they lost, I forgot to mention him. But I still think that there's enough here with this team, and if they can stay healthy, that they will still be able to, contend and be a playoff team, of course, and potentially make some noise. They won the Stanley Cup, of course, in 2023, and, had a really hard-fought first-round series with a very good Dallas Stars team, and that's just kind of what happens, after winning the Stanley Cup. And, you come in and play a hard-fought first round, and it's just not your year. But I think what really benefited this team was to be able to have a longer summer, to get healthy, and that's going to be a big thing here, especially for a guy like Mark Stone, because looking up and down at this lineup, they really can't afford to have him out of the lineup. He's got to be in, and when he's in, he's contributing and one of the best two-way forwards in the game. There's no question. And, there's a great opportunity for a lot of other players on this team. The Dorofievs of the world, the Brissons of the world, Samsonov is going to come in and be part of that tandem with Adin Hill. So, but I just think, you still have a lot of the big names here, the Eichels, the Petrangelos, the Stones, the Theodores, the list goes on. So I feel like there's enough there for Vegas still to be number 3 in this division and put them ahead of some other teams here in the Pacific. And so that's why I've got them at number 3.
I think that's fair. you really can't doubt these guys. I did have them a little lower. I had them at 4, but I can definitely see them at 3. There's still like the subtractions from this team in the offseason are going to hurt them more in the playoffs. It's not going to come necessarily in the regular season. They still have, great center depth despite losing Stevenson. They bring in Thomas Hertl last year, and so he's going to be, that guy behind Eichel. They still have, a top tier defense core in the league, and the goaltending's a 3-headed monster back there. This team has continued. They still have guys on the wing who are going to score them goals despite Marchessault leaving. Maybe Alex Holtz scores a ton for them this year if he gets real playing time. I don't know if that's the case, but Ivan Barbashev has stepped up to be a massive player for them. I'm not overly worried for them, but it is going to slowly subtract from them. It's slowly going to hurt, and then the playoffs, it's going to come up in a big way. The one question that you can never leave out when talking about the Vegas Golden Knights is injuries, like Hart mentioned. If a Eichel or a Stone goes down, it will hurt this team, and they will fall apart a lot quicker than ever before. So for that reason, I had them down at 4. I'm interested to see what this team can do, but I still think they're solid.
Yeah, I still think they're a solid team as well. I also had them in the 3 spot, Harp, so we're aligned there. Casey, you were talking about some of the youth on this team. You mentioned Alex Holtz, obviously the New Jersey connection there. I'm really excited to see what the youth on this team is going to do, because I think there are jobs to be grabbed in whether it's the top 6 or the middle 6 up front for this team. And Alex Holtz, Brendan Brisson, like you mentioned, Harper, Dorofeev, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yep. They've got guys who can step in and get a larger role where, in past years on this team, they wouldn't have been afforded that opportunity. So it'll be interesting. It's a bit of a different mix for this group up front. And I think injecting some youth into that lineup will be a good thing. And let's not forget, they're getting a full year of a healthy Thomas Hertl at their 2C, which I think is huge. That addition cannot be overstated. And also adding Noah Hannafin for a full season as well. Like, that is the perfect, mix of things that you need going into a full season, because, now they've had time to gel. They've played a playoff series together. They played half a season together, but, that all feels kind of rushed. Now you have a training camp. You're together with the guys. You're hopefully healthy, like you guys mentioned about players, like Mark Stone is the obvious one that always comes up. But, now you've got a chance. You've got a full season. And if this division goes anything like it did last year, then we're looking at a tale of 2 divisions anyway, where it's, the 4 at the top get all the points and the 4 at the bottom don't get all the points. I don't know if it's exactly going to go like that this year, but I don't think Vegas is in a bad spot at all. I agree with putting them in the 3 spot. And honestly, too, I don't mind their goaltending, even though they lost Logan Thompson. I think Samsonov, not in the spotlight, will be a just fine goalie for this team in a tandem or platoon situation. So I agree with Vegas at 3.
Well, they have to know that if they don't perform, then Akira Schmid is right there to take their spot. So the 2 top guys are going to have to perform. And we haven't mentioned one player on this team. The other guy I was alluding to when talking about Buffalo departures is Victor Olofsson, who, we've seen can score goals, and they're going to need someone to kind of fill some of that void of Marchessault. And why not Olofsson playing on the wing of Eichel, who they had a few years together, 2 at least. So I don't know, maybe that's a chemistry that works out, and maybe he clicks and takes off like some of these other guys that have departed from Buffalo and found some glory. Sorry, Harp.
That's
in case you definitely left that for me to bring up, didn't you? The Olofsson thing, because I mentioned we kind of had that back and forth earlier. Totally forgot. Totally slipped my mind. Dropped the ball a little bit. First episode back in a while. Cut me some slack. But yes, Victor Olofsson, looking forward to seeing what he can do as well.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess I'll go to the next team here. I don't have them at number 4. They're at my number 2, but coming in at number 4 is the Los Angeles Kings. can never hate on this team. I know that I'm partially biased because I've been a fan, but they are so strong. You have your star veterans who are an absolute rock for this team every single year. They always perform. And then you fill around those guys up front with players continuing to prove themselves. You have Byfield, who took off like a rocket last year. Keel Thomas, Arthur Kaliev, who's looking new contract,
or a trade.
Yeah, or a trade, sure. And then on a different tone than some of those young guys trying to prove themselves is Tanner Jeannot, who they picked up, who wants to prove that his trade history and new contract are not a bad idea after all. He's going to be flying. And with the likes of him and a Warren Fogle, this team continues to get bigger and stronger, and they can skate. I just really love the forward group. I know they got lucky with Talbot last year, but they bring in Kemper to replace him. I like that move. His numbers weren't there last year, but he was also kind of stuck in Washington. So I still think he has it in him. The D-core, they've added some size in there. They have the size-skill combo now. One guy size, one guy skill that I love. And they've never had that in the past. They've always had these kind of guys who were, not necessarily big and not necessarily going to dazzle you with their skill, but get the job done. Well, now they have the combo that works, and I'm excited to see how that plays out. I think that this team is going to surprise a lot of you, and I think it's also kind of catching up on guys like Kopitar and Doughty. Like we've got 1, 2, 3 more kicks at the can here, while we've got a great team to do it with. Adrian Kempe scores 1,000 goals this year.
Yeah, and Kevin Fiala, who's just a monster as well. But Byfield, like you mentioned, that guy is going to have a monster year. Like, I don't know what his over-under is in terms of points on the betting sites right now, but hammer the over no matter what it is. If it's 1,000, hammer the over, because this guy is going to have a great year. And, he showed us last year how good he can be. So I'm pretty confident in saying that he's going to have a good year. I like the addition of Kemper as well, Case. I think, like he said, he was in kind of a tough situation in Washington. And, I think being relied on as the guy, even if he's not one of the top guys in the league anymore, he can still thrive in that position. And, they're going to need him to be good this year. So I like that ad as well. The biggest ad for this team that I am absolutely in love with, and I think will have the biggest benefit to this team overall, is the new Gretzky tarps. These things are beautiful, guys. The black jersey with the old Gretzky LA Kings logo, just unbelievable. And maybe this is stupid to say, but doesn't that just fire up your team when you get on the ice? You're looking sharp. You're expected to make a big splash this year and prove to the rest of the league that this group of guys can get it done one more time. Talking about the guys like Doughty and Kopitar, like, I don't know. I think this team can have an incredible year, but I also had them at number 4. So I think they're a playoff team, but they could surprise. But I think with those tarps, they could do anything.
I really think they just need to make it into the playoffs. That's
yeah,
where this team's at. They have kind of the makeup of a good playoff team, so they just need to get there and not be the last one, because you don't want to play Edmonton. But other than that, I think they'll cruise.
Yeah, do not play the Oilers in the first round. I repeat, do not play the Oilers in the first round. Something we didn't mention too is Brandt Clarke. Is this the year where he's a full-time NHLer and he's going to put up 60 points?
100%.
He has torn up every league he's played in over the past 5 years. Like, this is the time for Brandt Clarke to step up and be a legit contributor in the NHL. And I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it will too. And Chad, you're right. Like, those uniforms are fantastic. They look great. And I also had LA in the number 4 spot. I don't know if I see this team going on a deep playoff run, but it would certainly help if they don't play Edmonton in the first round. Absolutely. And again, this is kind of one of those teams that they need to get it done by committee. It's got to be everyone chipping in. A player who has become a big part of this team, I think, is a guy like Trevor Moore. I don't know if we mentioned him or not, but he's been really great the last couple of years. And I do agree. I think Tanner Jeannot is going to have an impact on this team.
All right. Case for no, you did number 4. So me for number 5?
Yeah. Go ahead. Take it away for number 5.
Okay. Number 5, I think this pick makes a ton of sense, and I'm going to go with the Seattle Kraken. Looking at their lineup, I think, I feel like I've been saying this for years, but they're probably a bubble playoff team. But I think they're doing things right, like they're drafting good young players. They're not rushing them into the league for the most part. And I think another year older for a lot of these guys, and, with a few additions, I think they're going to be better than they were last season because, let's be honest, last season was a bit of a disappointment for the Kraken. Just 81 points on the season. They finished 6th in the division, or I guess tied for 5th with the Flames, but it wasn't a good year. But yeah, I'm picking Seattle. They've got Chandler Stevenson as their 2C, which, I think they overpaid for the guy a little bit, but he's still an effective player and a good bona fide second line center. I think that's going to be good for him and the team. A full year of Shane Wright, I think, will be a good thing. They added Brendan Montour on the back. They locked up their guy who they really like, Adam Larson, also on the back end as well. The only thing is they still haven't really addressed the goaltending, which, last year Joey Decord was good for them in stints, but Philip Grubauer was not, and he remains as their starter, supposedly. I saw a post today by the Seattle Kraken, and it was a bunch of players as their starting lineup, and Philip Grubauer was the goaltender. And every one of the comments that I read was like, Decord's our guy. So who knows what they're going to do between the pipes. I just thought that was interesting. But the more I look at this team, the more it looks like a legit playoff team. I think there are, of course, some holes in the lineup still, but they've got guys at every position that can do what you need them to do in the playoffs, and maybe a few adds at the deadline. If this team is right in and around wildcard territory, they could get into the playoffs. And I think number 5 in this division is probably right where they belong. What do you guys think?
I agree. I had them at 5. I half agree with your statement in that I think they're a playoff team and that they will make the playoffs at number 5, but I don't know if they're going to have success in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I've always been a bit of a Seattle hater in the past. They proved me right last year. Love them for that. So this year I'm higher on them than I ever have been before. Due to a couple great additions. I think you're undercutting Chandler Stevenson a little bit. I think he's a Selke type player. He's really going to contribute here. I'm interested to see him driving a line, how that's going to work out, but I think he's got it in him. There's the potential bounce back of a player like Matty Beniers, and then the breakout of a guy like Shane Wright ahead of us here. I'm just still at the point that they're a bit of a middling team. It's less so that they're not good that I have them at 5, and more so that there's good teams in this division now. Everyone's getting better, and they have as well. I think that sometimes doing nothing is the right option when it comes to goaltending. And I think that Joey Decord is going to come in with some confidence. This team kind of stating we're not worried about our tandem. We're fine with it. We don't have to go out and overspend on a goalie. We're not going to pay Kevin Langkonen $2 million. It's a bit of a statement to stick around with these guys. I don't know that it's going to be Grubauer, but I think that Joey Decord is going to come in with a bit of a confidence and take over that net.
I like the way you look at it. I haven't really thought about it like that, but if you're a goalie and you've had a couple tough seasons and your team kind of doubles down on you and bets the house on you, not that this is a go for it season for Seattle, but if they're making another bet on you and just saying we believe in you, then yeah, that's going to give you confidence for sure. So I like that.
Yeah, there were goalies out there in the offseason. And they could have went out and overspent, which is what they would have done if they tried to pick up a goalie. And instead they said, look, you're our guys. So I'm fine with it.
Do you guys know what I mean when I say this team looks like a playoff team? Like, just look at their top four, at least how it's assembled on Daily Faceoff. You've got Vince Dunn with Adam Larson. That's a great pair. Their second pair, you've got Jamie Alexiak with Brandon Montour. That's another great pair. Like, that's a top four of a team that you expect to be in the playoffs. Like, I think the way that they're built, all of a sudden, it's starting to come together. I'm not saying that Seattle is going to win this division by any stretch of the imagination or be incredible, but just I like the way that they're starting to look on paper. Guys are starting to, find the roles that they need to be in to be a playoff team, if that makes sense. Do you guys see the vision?
Again, I see them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like I see that. I don't know if I see them out of the first round. Am I crazy to say that Vince Dunn is like Brandon Montour light? So now they have two of these guys, and
yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
but as I've mentioned before, it's the combo. Like you said, Adam Larson, in a vacuum, not a player that I'm overly thrilled to have, but you pair him with a skilled guy like Vince Dunn, and that's a great pair.
Yep,
totally. Is Alexiak.
So, Case, you really think the Central is super weak, eh? If you think 5 teams of the Pacific are going to make the playoffs?
Yeah.
All right. Interested to get into that next week.
Yeah, exactly. Good little tease right there. Just a quick thought on Seattle again. Like I kind of said with the LA Kings, it's a team that has to score by committee. That's how it's been since day one. And, in their first year, they had in their second year, had a lot of guys that had career seasons, and then everybody kind of came down to earth last year. But you add somebody like Chandler Stevenson, who's going to help stabilize things and take some of the load off of, a guy like Matty Beniers. And we certainly expect Shane Wright to be an everyday NHLer this year. And then you add Montour to give you something a little extra on the blue line. And he's an excellent defenseman. So, they've added some pieces to kind of help usher along some of their younger players. And I think there's enough there for them to get it done by committee. And if they're not in the playoffs as a wild card team, or maybe they jump up into that 4 spot, something like that, they should be able to be playing meaningful games late in the season, and maybe just miss it outside. So I'm good with Seattle in the number 5 spot for sure. All right.
Okay, so then to you for number 6, right?
Yeah, number 6. And this spot is kind of tough. Like, it really comes down to 2 teams. A young team that you're kind of looking at to take a step forward in their rebuild, and then a team where, again, there are a lot of question marks around, but I still feel like is enough there. Again, sticking with this theme of like getting it done by committee, and we'll kind of see what happens. So I'm going to take a swing at it here and say that the Calgary Flames will be in number 6 in this division. They had a much quieter summer, which I feel like is big, but there's no question that you see the direction of this team. It looks very much like it's a rebuild versus a retool, and I am excited to see some of their young players take a big step. Connor Zary, Matt Coronado, Dustin Wolf, of course, who is going to be the starting goaltender by all accounts, with Dan Vladar behind him, but that could always change. And, we'll see what happens, like, with the Flames, where they are at the trade deadline and all of that. But there are some very good veterans on this team who can contribute a lot. Mackenzie Weegar had 20 goals last season, very quietly. Rasmus Anderson is an excellent defenseman. Nazem Kadri had a big year last year. We'll see what Huberdeau is able to do. I've been seeing some reports and articles out there that Huberdeau may actually thrive in Calgary finally with, not a lot of expectations on this team. It's one of those teams where we'll just kind of see what happens. I do think that they're a little thin on the blue line for sure. They've lost a lot of guys back there, but there's still enough here that I think that they should be able to be competitive and able to win by committee. Maybe not win a lot. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't have them in 7 or 8 in this division. I think 6 is very fair for Calgary. But again, for the second year in a row, they'll be very interesting to see and could be kingmakers when the deadline comes around. So what do you guys think of Calgary at 6?
Chad, why don't you go ahead and try to convince me, because I would have this team at 7 or 8 in this division.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I also had Calgary at 6 here, so Harp, we're thinking the same, and as long as the last 2 picks go in my favor here, I might go 8 for 8 in terms of how our total rankings go versus my own personal ranking. So that would be interesting and would be a lot of pressure because we're going to post those. But yeah, I've got Calgary in the 6th spot. Like you said, Harper, I just think there's a lot here still. Igor Sharangovich had a good season last year. Andrei Kuzmenko, those are 2 guys who can score goals. Whether their original teams thought they were core pieces or not is besides the point here. They're on this team and they can still score. Connor Zary is going to have a full season, and I'm interested to see what he can do. Matt Coronado, like you mentioned, Harper, Dustin Wolf as well. So, it's going to be nice to see the youth injected into this lineup, but also, is this the year? And I hate that this is kind of what we always go to, but is this the year now that Jonathan Huberdeau gets back to scoring more points like we're used to see him doing? It's crazy that he went from, what was it, 115 to 55 to 52 in 3 years. Like that's crazy. I don't know if he's ever going to be a 100-point player again, but I think there's more there, especially with the talent of the young players coming into this lineup. I don't know. I when I look at this team compared to obviously San Jose, they're much better than San Jose. Case, the other team I'm sure you're talking about is Anaheim, that you think could be in the 6th spot. I just think there's more meat on the bone in Calgary, and that could change if they deal everybody at the deadline and they do commit to a full rebuild here. But as their roster looks right now, I think they're better on paper than the other 2 teams in this division, and I've got them at number 6 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had them at 7, and I even thought about putting them at 8 because I don't believe in this team. I hope that I'm wrong for the sake of Canada, because we could use another good Canadian team. But when I look at them, I think this is the first time in maybe a decade that they don't have an outstanding decor. And it's kind of the situation where when you have 6 people paddling an oarboat, if 2 people on one side are very strong, well, the boat doesn't go straight. And that might be the case with Uyghur and Rasmus Andersson trying to absolutely carry this decor.
Yeah.
And then in the net, you're down to a young goalie who needs to prove himself, because we haven't really seen him at the NHL level be the guy. And he was outstanding in the AHL. But we'll see if this is going to be a nice environment for him to try to prove that. So, iffy decor, new goaltender, and then add in the fact that I don't think that this forward core has the defensive players to fix those 2 other situations. I think that there's maybe a couple guys like a Kadri or a Backlund and a Coleman who can play good, solid 2-way defense up front, or 2-way forward up front. But after that, it drops off very quick. There's not a lot of guys who I'm going to rely on in our own end up front. And I just think that whole thing sounds like a recipe for disaster. I think that with the veteran guys they have up front, they might be able to outwork their way to a few wins this year. But overall, I don't see a recipe for success.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same page here. We don't think this team is going to be very good, whether it's sixth or seventh, according to our predictions. We're agreeing that this team isn't going to be great. I like your point about, having a rough decor and a rookie goalie and not having defensive forwards, because that combination could be a recipe for disaster for the confidence of their young rookie goalie. Dustin Wolf was great in the American League. And, I was one of the people who was saying, get him in the NHL back when this team was actually good. And, they didn't. They let him marinate in the minors. And now he's ready for the NHL. And the team isn't going to be very good in front of him. So that's going to be tough. And there's no guarantee he's going to be good at the NHL level, because do you guys remember a guy by the name of Garrett Sparks, who won AHL Goalie of the Year and the Calder Cup or Calder Trophy? Calder Cup, that's right. And then became absolutely nothing, never heard from again. So it doesn't always translate. I'm not comparing the two in terms of apples to apples, because clearly Dustin Wolf is a great prospect. It is going to be tough, though, between the pipes for this team, because it's not going to be smooth sailing in front of them.
Yeah, and to kind of continue to build on that and then touch upon something you guys were talking about, which is Huberdeau. When the way I see this team having a bit of success at keeping the puck out of their net is playing a real dump and chase style. And when you're playing dump and chase, I don't see a guy like Huberdeau thriving in that situation. I don't see Andrei Kuzmenko scoring much in Calgary with a dump and chase style. I don't see Sharangovich keeping up what he did last year in a dump and chase style. And really that's just the way it's going to have to be for this team to, stay out of their own end, keep it 200 feet away. Yeah. And I don't see that working. I don't see 80 points for Huberdeau when he's going into the corners.
It's just crazy. You go from 115 to the mid 50s back-to-back years. Like, it's wild. Obviously, situation is everything, and Huberdeau and Weegar must just be kicking themselves right now after watching the Panthers win the Cup. All those guys who, they battled with for all those years. It's tough, but this is their situation now. We don't think Calgary's going to be very good, but it is what it is. They'll probably make out like bandits at the deadline again. I'm just not looking forward to hearing that week after week after week leading up to the trade deadline for the third season in a row.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, I think I mentioned this, off the top about Calgary, and before we move on here, I'll just say again, I think it was important for Craig Conroy and the Flames to have a much quieter summer. But yeah, we can kind of see how this could ramp up again as the season goes on. And I will say too, like, for a team that has had a tough time getting players to commit long-term and to stick around, I was very happy to see the Sharangovich extension. And, the guy did have 30 goals last season, and that's a very fair contract for a player like that. And if a young, talented guy like him can continue to progress and be a part of this next layer, this young core of Flames that we're seeing coming up here, then that's a real positive for the Flames moving forward. And they're getting a new building as well in Calgary, and I think that's really going to help their situation moving forward.
I, like every Devils fan, have a soft spot in my heart for Yegor Sharangovich, and will always hope for his success. He is just a happy-go-lucky guy, and I'm happy he's doing well.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
all
nice.
Right. Yes, very nice. All right, let's get to 7 and 8 here. So, yeah, Case, back to you for the 7 spot, and then Chad will finish off with you for number 8 in this division. So, Case, take it away. Number 7.
Yeah, so the team that I did have ahead of the Calgary Flames, and a team I was higher on last year than what I should have been, is the Anaheim Ducks. Now, for one, I need to
8
point
for
out
8.
that they got absolutely hammered with injuries last year, and that's probably part of their demise. But when I look at this team, I see a top 6 of talented young players who are going to absolutely take off. I can't wait to see a second season of Leo Carlson. And then after those top 6 young players, you are just filled with solid veteran players. I love a Frankie Vetrano. I love a Ryan Strome, a Killorn, Robbie Fabry is a great addition. This forward core looks great. I'm really excited for that. The back end is kind of like a weird off year for the Anaheim Ducks in that they're not necessarily filled with guys they're looking to trade at the deadline and make out like gangbusters. But Minchikov was phenomenal for them last year. Hopefully they can have him healthy this season. Cam Fowler is a steady veteran. They named Radko Gudas captain. That was a shock to me, but he's a solid player back there. And then I'm excited to see what Olin Zellweger can do in full another season here in the NHL. I think he's going to be a great player. They saw him and they said, we can get rid of Jamie Drysdale. In my mind, if I was Zellweger, that's what I would be thinking going into the season. They said, we have to like players. I can get rid of them because I have him. And that's got to be a confidence booster. And then, like a rock, always back there, the anchor, Gibson in net. And then Dostal.
I think Dostal's better, dude.
Yeah.
He is.
Maybe.
I think so.
Maybe nowadays. But what I'm getting at is that's a great tandem. That's going to win you some hockey games. So I can see them, Anaheim finally, fucking deja vu, taking a step here.
Yeah. Listen, Case, I'm in agreement with a lot of what you said. I really like the forward core. Their top 6 is like every single player in their top 6 is a stud. Like they've got so much talent up front, so much talent on the back end with the guys you mentioned. And then between the pipes, they have a good tandem. The only thing holding me back from putting this team higher is the inexperience, really, because, as the season drags on, those young players who haven't been through it sometimes struggle to find that next gear. And I just wonder if maybe, there's a lack of attention to detail in some players, namely a guy like Zegras, who there's always some trade rumors about this guy, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of talent, this team is absolutely loaded and they are going to be good in the future. I'm hesitant to say that they'll be any better than number 7 in the Pacific this year. However, I would be happily surprised and I would be happy in general if this team, competed a little bit more, because I'm sick of seeing this team at the bottom of the division and the league standings, frankly, especially now, because you guys know I love things like this. They got new jerseys as well. So this is going to be a little bump for them. They don't have to wear the ugliest tarps in the league anymore. I mean, the bright orange is, say what you will about the bright orange, but at least they brought back the old school logo. And I think that's just got to be another boost for this team. So I think as these players get another year older, another year more experienced, they're going to be a bit better and they're going to win some hockey games through raw talent alone. I just don't think they're detailed enough or built well enough around that kind of core of talent yet to truly compete. But another couple years, I think this team is going to be scary good.
Absolutely. No, they're loaded with talent. It is the inexperience that kind of hurts this team right now. But I think that by the sounds of it, and from what Elliot Friedman reported, Pat Verbeek did take some big swings this summer, making offers to guys like Stamkos and Marchessault to try and bring in some more impact veterans to, help kind of insulate their young talent that they have. And they weren't able to get guys on that level, but you bring in a Dumoulin and a Fabry to the mix, and Case, you mentioned this guy, and I absolutely love him too, Frank Vetrano, and what a huge year that he had. And it would be so easy for Pat Verbeek to part ways with the Vetranos and the Gudises of the world and these guys. But no, it's very clear that it's time for some progression to happen with this team. I think it will. I Could I see this team as high as, number 6 or 5 even? Sure, I guess it's possible. They should be better this year, and we should see some growth. Let's not forget, I think they started the last season like 9-6 or something, and we're like, oh geez, like, this looks different, and then it just completely fell off the rails from there. So I'll be looking to see that kind of turn around a little bit. But yeah, they're absolutely loaded with talent. They've made an effort to insulate that young talent, and we'll see what happens. But Anaheim should be better this season.
Couple numbers while we wrap up on Anaheim here. 61, 65, 15. Those are Trevor Zegras' point totals over the last 3 seasons from his rookie year until last year. 61, 65, 15. Just 15 points last year in 31 games, but the 2 seasons prior had over 60 points. So my question quickly, over under Zegras this year, points 60. What do you think? Over
100%. Yeah.
Harp?
Now that he can fit his head through the door, he's going to score more than 60 points.
That's tough, because with some of the guys that they've added to the mix, I'm kind of wondering where he fits in. Like, you have a Cutter Gauthier, who you could argue is maybe ahead of him on the depth chart. I don't know. Like, it just depends where he kind of slots in. So I don't know if I would go as high as 60, but I'd say 50 points over under. I would go over 50.
So you're saying under 60 then?
Under 60, yeah, under 60.
I just imagine that regardless of which line he's playing on, he's going to be playing with one of these 4 players: McTavish, Gauthier, Carlson, and Killorn. And all 4 of those guys have the size to support a player like Trevor Zegras and the skills to keep up with him. So
That's a good point.
I have to imagine he scores more than 60.
Yeah, by the way, Cutter Gauthier, I know he's a good player, but he's a good prospect right now. He's played 1 NHL game total. He had a point in it. So I guess his points per game is higher than Zegras' right now. But Zegras had back-to-back 60-plus point seasons as a rookie and then as a second-year player. True. I feel like at one point Zegras was the most overrated player in the league because of his flashiness, like people would hype up his talent and whatnot. But at this point, he's got to be the most underrated player in the league. Am I wrong with that statement? Because, you don't just go out and get back-to-back 60-plus point seasons as a 19, 20-year-old. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far to say as he's one of the most underrated players in the league. I think the biggest thing we're looking at with Zegras, it's not the point totals, it's that the Ducks want him to be more of a well-rounded player, be more committed to a two-way game. And so if he can commit to that and put up points at the same time, then it's a win-win for everybody. And could he be capable of doing that? Definitely. I think so. So we'll have to wait and see there. And by the way, I just wanted to say too, that Leo Carlson is going to be an absolute monster in a couple of years. And he, definitely showed something in his first season, and they were they didn't want to put too much on the young player, but he's going to take a big step this year for sure.
Yeah, they just got to make sure that the injury bug doesn't bite them this year, because obviously that was a big problem for that team last year. But okay, going on to number 8 now. It's the San Jose Sharks by process of elimination. 8 for 8, by the way, my rankings versus our group rankings. That's terrifying. The group think after 2 months of not talking to you guys is wild. So I don't know how that happened, but here we are. But yeah, they're going to be not very good this season. I think that is an understatement. But that being said, I love what they're doing right now. Acquiring picks, and you're really going to load up this team with talent over the next couple years. They've already got some really, really good prospects, and you're going to be able to see Celebrini and Will Smith play together this year, which is just going to be so exciting, adding them to a forward group with a guy like William Eklund, who is another high pick of theirs who I really like. So it's going to be fun to watch. But their forwards, outside of those really talented guys, they're just a bunch of other guys who, like, you could put them in the category of let's see what they can do. And then, because they're vying for jobs still at this point. And then their back end. And by the way, that's a generalization for the most part. I know there are some good players up there too. And then on the back end, it's kind of just another group of guys. And, it looks like a rebuilding team. I don't think that's crazy or offensive to say this team's going to be good in a few years, but it won't be this season. I do like their goaltending situation, though, with Blackwood and Askarov, I think, and Vanacek, I guess. They've got 3 guys, which should be good because they're going to get absolutely shelled. I don't know if this was the best career decision for Yaroslav Askarov because his numbers probably won't look good after his 2-year deal is up, because this team isn't going to be good in front of him, but he's a good goaltender, so maybe he steals a few games for this team. But they're not going to be good this season. They will be in the future. I love the direction of this team, but just not there yet.
Yeah, I think they'll be sneaky fun to watch and, might surprise us. But
yeah,
it's a team full of young talent and a lot of guys trying to find themselves in this league. Some rookies, some sophomores. There's going to be a lot of growing pains, but I like the direction they're heading in. I think that they've already leapfrogged the Chicago Blackhawks in my mind. So I think they're ahead of schedule on the rebuild. They've done a really good job with it. And they're, patching the holes around the rookies with some solid veterans, and Toffoli and Wenberg and Goodrow. So I like what they're doing here. It's going to be a tough season probably, but it's going to be fun.
Definitely. I agree. I love the direction this team is heading in. I think Mike Grier has done an unbelievable job. Last year was just an awful season with only 19 wins, but you can really start to see the foundation. And when it looked like for a while that there was absolutely no hope coming for this team, then you get a guy like Macklin Celebrini, a former junior Shark. His dad works for the Golden State Warriors, like all the connections in the world to the San Jose Sharks, and that immediately changes everything. And by the way, those 2 players, him and Will Smith, are going to have every opportunity to to grow and have success in San Jose. And that's the other thing that they're doing really well. Not only are they trying to insulate these 2 young cornerstone players of their franchise with good veterans, but Will Smith is going to be living with Patty Marleau this year, and Macklin Celebrini is going to be living with Joe Thornton. That is just absolutely perfect for those 2. A couple of names I wanted to mention in that forward group.
Couple Leafs legends,
A couple of other forwards I wanted to mention who have really found homes in San Jose and really make it kind of a good-looking top 6, with a couple of young stars in the making in Celebrini and Smith. But I wanted to shout out Mikael Granlund, who's really found a home there. He had a great season in San Jose last year. And, sorry, Case, but Fabian Zetterlund looks like a core piece of this team. He had 24 goals last year, and he's become a really important player for them. So looking forward to San Jose this year. They should be better than last season, but they're going to have a lot of hard nights. It'll be like Chicago last year, and, Chicago should be able to take that next step forward, this season. But it's going to be better for San Jose, and they just got to continue along this path here. So I'm excited to watch them. But yeah, it's going to be a tough season no matter what. A lot of growing pains, and no question they're number 8 in this division.
Harp, you don't have to apologize to Case for former Devils succeeding on other teams. Have you seen the Devils lineup? Like, they're stacked.
Timo Meier for Fabian Zetterlund.
Yeah, he does not care.
I also like Zetterlund. I'm glad he's doing well.
Yeah, like Shakir Mukhamadullin, like goodbye. Timo Meier, hello.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mukhamadulin's going to be a great player too. They've got so many guys. Like their prospect pool is legit now, and this is another team in a few years. It's going to be so good.
Do they now have the best prospect pool in the NHL? All of a sudden, like this kind of happened overnight. It feels like when they had all these aging veterans on long-term deals, and then with the flip of a switch, it feels like they've got all these prospects now, and they're finally headed in the right direction. That's what it feels like to me.
To me, like them or Columbus is, Carolina. I don't know. There's a few good ones, but they're definitely up there.
Or even like Montreal's has gotten really good recently. I guess it depends, like if you consider Celebrini and Smith as prospects, because we assume they're going to play a full season. It's like, when do you do the cutoff of like, who's a prospect, who's not? I guess it's if they're eligible for the Calder. Maybe that's like the easy. Yeah. I guess that's a good way to look at it.
Haven't played an NHL regular season game yet, so yeah. But no, they're heading in a good direction for sure. All right, there we go, fellas. 1 through 8 through the Pacific Division ahead of the 24-25 NHL season. It's great to be back with you guys, and great to be talking some hockey again. Next week, we will be going into our season preview of the teams in the Central Division. So looking forward to that. Stay tuned, and we will chat with you again next week. Take care.